team. And then after me, Andrew is going to zoom out a little bit and talk about more variations of the design and more sort of concerns about stablecoin design more broadly. So just to get a sense of the room, who has heard of Maker before and Dai? Cool. Okay, so who has like looked into the design of Dai before?
Not on the coding side, on the write-ups.
Cool. Okay, who has personally used a DeFi product, like a DeFi loan before? Okay, cool. That gives me a sense of where people are in the room. So this was put together by my colleague Kenton. He put a ton of work into it, and before this point, I was just talking with Andrew. There was a lot of technical documentation out there, but not a lot that was very accessible. So okay, so we'll start sort of really basic and zoom in a little bit. And feel free to ask questions as we go. You don't have to save them for the end. Let's make this conversational so that we can sort of clear things up as we go. Okay, so you guys have a general sense of what a stablecoin is for, right? So make USD-denominated products accessible on the blockchain. Pretty easy to understand. People know what USD is, especially if you're in like a country that has a more volatile currency. You might want to get some exposure to USD, but there might be various legal or political barriers in place of that, so crypto can be a way around that. DAI is Maker's flagship product. It's a stablecoin. And it is, unlike, say, Tether or USDC, it's not backed by a fiat bank account. Those are sort of very simple to understand kinds of stablecoins. USDC has an actual bank account with at least $1 for every USDC. Tether may or may not have an actual bank account, but very, very basic, right? Maker is like one level of complexity further because it's crypto collateralized, right? There's ideally, depending on the state of the system, at least one USD worth of crypto collateral for every USD worth of DAI that's been issued. And because the price of crypto is volatile, it gets a bit more complicated. So how does DAI keep its peg? This is a very high level again, right? Like DAI is worth $1 if people are willing to pay $1 for it, right? So the system in isolation can say whatever it wants, but it's only really worth $1 if there's a buyer. So the price of DAI, just like the price of anything, is ultimately determined by demand on the market. So in order for a stablecoin to be stable, it has to have some way of influencing supply and demand in the market. So that's what the system tries to do. It tries to align incentives for the different actors in the DAI system to control the price. So how is DAI produced? How is DAI minted? It's produced by anyone permissionlessly locking up their crypto collateral into a Maker vault. And it's just a smart contract that says if you lock up a certain amount so originally just Ether, but now a variety of other crypto tokens, you can withdraw or basically mint out of thin air some DAI. And so, for example, with ETH in the original single collateral DAI system, the collateral ratio was 150%. So meaning for every $1.50 worth of Ether you locked into the system, you could mint $1 worth of DAI. And this buffer is there so that the system can correct for fluctuations in the price. Exactly how it corrects, we'll get to. So you can think of it kind of like a mortgage. You lock up the deed to your property that you want to purchase, and in return, the bank gives you the money to actually purchase it. But if you were ever to default on the mortgage, the bank would take the property. So that's also what's going on in the vaults. Liquidations. If the collateral, say the price of Ether, drops to the point where, say, you have 10 DAI that you've withdrawn, but now the Ether collateral is worth less than 10, or is coming sort of precariously close to $10, like that would lead to a system where the system becomes under-collateralized. So then what the system will do is it will liquidate your position. And it will take the Ether that you had as collateral and sell it on the open market to buy back DAI off the open market to sort of cancel out that debt. So it's constantly, as it sort of enters this danger zone, liquidating people's positions, selling them in order to reduce the supply of DAI and stay solvent. So that's the risk. When you open a vault to draw DAI to take this loan, you're taking on this risk that you might get liquidated. And so you're constantly managing your position to make sure you're above that danger zone. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so this is a high-level diagram of the various roles. Over in this corner here, you have the DAI holders and the vault owners. The vault owners are the ones taking on the risk. Then they use DAI for various things, and then you might just be someone who holds DAI, who buys and sells goods in exchange for it, and so you're not directly involved with the vault at all. You're just like, oh, it's $1. Okay, I trust it as $1. Then you have the maintainers of the system itself. So you have the developers like me. You have the oracles that are feeding data from the real world into the system. So for example, what is the current price of Ether? Right? That's the oracle problem. How do you get data from outside the blockchain into the blockchain? And that's of course very complicated. Keepers, this is a sort of maker-specific term for other maintenance roles. So for example, people who run servers, or people who run certain parts of the protocol, like make sure the oracles stay up. People who do market making, for instance, right? Because again, the price of DAI is only $1. If someone's willing to buy it for $1, in order for someone to be able to buy it for $1, there has to be a market. So whether it's on a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange, someone has to be providing liquidity, right? And then over on here, we have the governance side. So we have MKR holders, and they're directly involved in the operation of the system in a way that I'll get to in a moment. And we have risk teams who are sort of the experts looking at, okay, say there's a proposal to bring in some sort of Bitcoin and allow it to be collateral for DAI. Is that a safe or risky thing to do, and how much? So there are various parameters in the system that MKR holders can govern. For example, the debt ceiling. So you could say, okay, this coin is interesting, it has some potential adoption, but it might be risky. So we'll only allow users to issue a total of 1 million or 10 million DAI based on that collateral. That way, it'll only be a certain percentage of the overall system. So even if it totally implodes, the overall system is only impacted to a certain extent. Oops. Okay, that's basically what I just talked about. Question? Oh, it hasn't woken up yet. There you go. Oh, yeah, right. The other thing that the keepers do that is worth mentioning is, so it's a decentralized system, right? The system itself, right? Because Ethereum isn't really, there isn't like a mechanism for event-driven actions, right? All of the events in the system are user actions. Someone from the outside of the blockchain is sending a transaction in to cause something to happen. So liquidations, don't just happen automatically. There isn't some sort of like cron job, checking liquidation levels. Liquidations happen when someone notices that a petition has gone into liquidation risk and does it themselves. And they're incentivized to do that because they get a chunk of collateral, like a sort of finder's fee for liquidating. So a keeper could just be someone running a bot that's scanning all the positions, looking for ones that have become vulnerable to liquidation, and then going after them. So it's kind of ecosystem of like, like predation. Black Thursday. Yeah, in March. Right. I don't know that I'm going to be able to give you a good, like, precise overview of what happened there, but right, there were a number of large positions that got liquidated. Right. Right. Yeah, but I remember the specific issue was that there were certain liquidations that got it's been a while since I thought about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was bad.
But Maker as
but
a system survived.
That's true. That's true.
Before this was like when
Yeah.
$200.
Yeah. It was part of the whole like convulsion of the market around trying to figure out what to do with COVID. Right. There's that March, April, like. Yeah. Okay. So different lines of defense that I've mentioned. right? Like in basic operation, the system itself, as in the smart contracts, are not really involved. It's just market making, supply and demand. People have a high level of trust in DAI, so if it goes above the peg, you might just have people wanting to arbitrage, right? Selling something in exchange for, locking their collateral so that they could get DAI at a 1-to-1 ratio, then selling it on the open market for more than $1, profiting, closing their position, walking away. And then if it goes below $1 and they have confidence that it'll return, then they buy it for cheap and wait for it to return and sell it. So that's sort of everyday operation. There's always these little fluctuations that.
So these adjustments to these rates,
Mm-hmm.
are you voted on regularly, or is this like happen automatically?
The adjustments to rates happen through governance. Haven't gotten there, but the short version is that you can create a proposal to tweak a parameter, say like the debt ceiling of a given collateral type, the stability fee, which you can think of as the interest rate of a given collateral type, or the DAI savings rate, which is some portion that gets pulled off to DAI holders. And then those proposals take effect in the system like directly if enough MKR votes for them. So there's like direct MKR voting into governance.
And how long does it take for each proposal to generate their costs?
Well, in the system, there's a little bit of a safety window, but basically as soon as, so we use a thing called, it's not conviction voting exactly, approval voting. So rather than like this or that, it's just, what's the meme they use for this? Hat, I think. And one proposal at any given time has the hat, and that means it's the proposal that has the most MKR locked on it at a given time. So as soon as some new proposal has more MKR locked on it than the previous proposal with the hat, it takes effect. And so I'm jumping ahead here, but this governance design ideally aligns the incentives with MKR holders with the system, right? Because if the system works well, then Maker looks good, the price goes up, right? If the system doesn't work well, the price of MKR goes down. Not just because of perception, but because of something I'll get to in a moment. So supply and demand is sort of the everyday operation. The price is constantly fluctuating in small amounts and constantly being arbitraged away. So if there's a larger price deviation, like I mentioned, liquidation takes place, and then collateral is sold and DAI is bought back to try and bring things back into balance that way. If the price drop is too large or too fast and that can't keep up, we also do what's called MKR minting and burning. A lot of text on this slide. You can read it. But yeah, if liquidations aren't keeping up, the protocol accrues bad debt. And once it hits a threshold, the protocol will automatically mint new MKR, sell it on the open market, and again, buy back DAI to kill the surplus debt. And so that means if you're an MKR holder, your token is being diluted.
So is kind of like eating up?
I think so.
Yeah.
But it's one line of defense.
It's one line of defense, yeah.
Is this order first or second, third, fourth?
Yeah, this is the order. This is like as things get worse.
So at what extent that you will come to the third step, which is minting and burning?
So it's this threshold. This is a governance controlled parameter. So basically, like the system will be trying to liquidate, but if basically the value of collateral drops below the value of the DAI in circulation by some threshold, then this will be triggered.
So let's say it's like 100%, like one is exact collateral, and let's say the rules is 100%, then when it's 100%, then we will perform minting and burning so that we can bring back
Mm-hmm.
over collateral.
Yep.
But logically, if things are moving too fast,
Yeah.
then someone would have an incentive to do the first and second step, right? Because they can profit from like liquidating and so on.
It depends, right? Because sometimes the situations are so uncertain that for most people, the best situation, even if they want to arbitrage, is to like wait and see. So, and then last resort is what's called emergency shutdown. And this is like a formal way of giving up on the peg, which is actually really nice when you think about it, because it's one of the things that was reassuring to me about Maker when I was thinking about joining them is that they weren't like, oh, this system will just always work. It will cover all possible circumstances, because it's very, very hard to say that, and really unrealistic. If you look at especially things like, the book Black Swans by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and looking at the outsized influence of very rare events, it was reassuring to me that the people behind Maker were thinking about, okay, there might just be a black swan one day, and we might just have to fail. So what's the formal, graceful way of failing, right? And so if emergency shutdown happens, basically what happens is that DAI, rather than being pegged to $1, becomes a claim on whatever collateral is left in the system. Okay, so quick dive into vocabulary. This is a very long slide deck, and I don't need to go over all of it, so just tell me when you guys feel like, okay, there's a good stopping point. Psi versus DAI. Psi was single collateral DAI. DAI is a full-fledged multi-collateral DAI. Yeah, and so single collateral DAI was launched in the winter of 2017, actually before I joined the company. And then, it rode through 2017, 2018 pretty successfully, right? Because there was like basically an 80, 90% drop in price, and it worked. So that was also very reassuring. And it's simplified in a few different ways that you can see here. Yeah.
When the projector went off, the
Oh.
lights,
Oh,
Slides stopped sharing.
Oh, okay.
I want to extend
Do I
the
have to start this again?
sleep time.
the laptop or the
Laptop.
projector.
Yeah.
EKR. There's somebody who writes DKRKH what?
DKR-KHRJ.
Is that nice text?
And I know you're going to cover it at some point, Lawrence.
Mhm.
This is backstop syndicate. I think around the Thursday time. And I don't know if that falls under step 3 or a different step.
Back. Yeah.
There was this thing where like any people in the community are like called to like put some funds in because there's like a backstop just to show that if price kept dropping or something, then that pool funds would use to backstop whatever amount that was like backing the system that would use as reserves, and like they needed like where people to like put those money.
Yeah, I don't know if that was ever a formal part of the system so much as more as like a social organization around it.
That would have impacted step number 3,
Well, you could think of it because step number 3 is really run within the system, right? Like it's the smart contracts themselves minting more MKR.
okay.
So that I think would really be more like step 1, like
just more
sort of like an additional market force, or even like an additional social force signaling a market force.
yeah, because the idea is just signaling, just to show that we have the kind of essentially also what Luna did with their like Bitcoin reserves and stuff, right? Just to show that they have this much reserves if something were to happen. So effectively, it's something like that.
Yeah.
Luna didn't, although they at the time they are under-collateralized, but they didn't have the last step, the natural claims back, and they use it to manipulate the market, but unsuccessfully.
I think it's screensaver.
Screensaver?
Yeah. Oh no, sorry.
Oh, lock screen setting. There you
Sleep.
go.
Yeah, second one.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
This is better.
Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah.
So does Maker maintain a large pool of DAI to automatically liquidate people, or they just rely on individual people?
Yeah, that's
I guess they have to like running bots.
They just rely on individual people running bots. Yeah, yeah. And so to liquidate, you don't need to put up your own funds, right? Because basically the funds are being provided by the system claiming the collateral that's already in there. No, you trigger the action of the system taking a portion of collateral and selling it for DAI. Yeah, yeah. So you don't need to put up your own funds on that. Yeah. You just pay for gas. Yeah, exactly. That's why there's incentive there.
Oh, okay. More.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah. Oh no. This.
Yeah, actually, one of our reference apps was just a list of positions that you could sort by how close they are to liquidation, and you could actually run the transaction, from that UI. Now, of course, it was a lot slower than people doing bots. So most of the time, something would come up and someone else would have already claimed it. But yeah, it's that accessible. A little bit more into the weeds here. Yeah. Yeah.
So you could choose.
So single collateral DAI, I think technically still exists, although it may have been like formally shut down at this point. Like I still have some Psi in a wallet somewhere. But yeah, we've moved everything over to DAI at this point. Yeah, and I actually
just below the price because
Mhm.
whatever reserves they haven't been keeping up, size movements should just follow it.
yeah, exactly. Like it should just be a claim on whatever collateral is left in the system, which I don't think is very much at this point. And there was a formal migration process that I helped out with a while back. Yeah, that I think I've mostly forgotten about at this point. But there was an intermediate smart contract where you would like put some Psi in and put some DAI in, and it would gradually like just one way convert.
I don't know if you want to answer this
Yeah.
while you're being recorded, but I didn't know any opinions on like moving from Psi to DAI.
I mean, it was always part of the vision because it was clear that like for the longer term growth of the blockchain, it had to be able to incorporate a variety of different kinds of assets, especially real world assets, right? And that's still one of the larger missions, I think, of the blockchain as a whole, is to be able to sort of reach out of its isolated system and handle, like real estate or fine goods or collectibles or whatever it is. I don't know if we're working with them directly, but they've been working with Centrifuge, for example, for a long time. That's one group that's been doing real world assets, and a number of other ones.
I think Makers not even report, at least the idea.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, the founder was first involved in BitShares before Ethereum.
Yeah. Shares.
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm actually super out of date as far as like where it is with real world assets now. Like if you were to go to the Maker forums, there's been a number of community proposals about different kinds of real world assets, real estate, probably even like other different kinds of loans. So yeah.
Another question about the liquidations. So, as a bot runner, I simply send an Ethereum transaction. I pay the gas fee.
Mm-hmm.
Maker will market dump the collateral, but it doesn't because I get the collateral, right?
The collateral is exchanged for DAI.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Maker market dumps the collateral, gets DAI somehow, and then
Yeah.
I get the DAI.
You get a portion of the DAI. The rest of it is used to make up for the shortfall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get.
That's one of the configurable rates per collateral type. Yeah, the sort of I forget what the meme language term is for it, but it's a finder's fee basically.
Maybe it's something you could draw on there.
Yeah, I mean it might be later in the spreadsheet. Like I remember that the liquidation module is called the cat, and the cat So a cup, we still use the word? No, sorry. In multi-collateral DAI, they're called urns. A vault with collateral in it that you draw a DAI from is called an urn. And so the cat bites an urn to liquidate it. Yeah.
Would mean.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think unless there's a lot of demand for it, this is probably about as deep as I'm going to go here. Are there any like burning questions right now or desire for me to go a bit deeper?
I think so. I think like Andrew's question about how that execution is done of liquidating and then what's in it for the liquidator.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I told him this directly, but I guess I didn't say it to the whole group. That part is completely decentralized, right? So people, whoever they are on the blockchain, are incentivized to do it and sort of compete against each other to do it because they get a portion of the collateral. So the collateral, so just enough collateral to make up for the shortfall is taken out of the position, converted to DAI on the open market, and then a portion of that goes to the person who initiated the transaction. So basically, they just have to pay gas and know what they're doing with smart contracts, and then they get a portion of the proceeds.
Because it's over collateralized, right? So like
Yeah.
Even at that threshold, it's still over collateralized.
That's right.
When you go to liquidate, 100% would still be enough to cover whatever the DAI, and let's say an extra 20% would go to you as the liquidator.
Yeah. So classically, like once the position is under 150% or 145% collateral to value, then it'll start getting liquidated.
So unless the price tanks really quickly,
right,
before liquidation can happen, then
yeah, there still should be enough buffer to make up for the shortfall and pay some finder's fee.
So step number 3 with the MKR minting and burning is where if it falls down really quickly and liquidations don't work out, that's where step number 3 comes in, right?
That's right.
Technically, most of the collateral are stable coins. Technically, that's what can happen to that figure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we're in a
yeah. Last time, I remember at first we had the collateral are mostly in it's slightly moving to
yeah, and now like half of it is in like USDC, right? Yeah, more than half. So it's different. Yeah. That's
moving away from USDC because now USDC accounts will be frozen.
I mean, there's always been awareness that it's a risk, and it's been a lively conversation the whole way through. Yeah, I think these are very difficult things to come down on one side or the other of, because it's like, on the one hand that really accelerates growth and adoption, and on the other hand it does increase this kind of risk that if you just sort of become a wrapper for USDC or something at the end of the day.
But the collateral are fully voted, is committing voted, right? What portion?
Yeah. So there's 2 tiers of governance. So one is the executive governance that I mentioned, where you vote with MKR and it goes directly into the system, and the other is signaling or polling, right, where it's just about more the social level, right, getting people to converge upon an idea and then later do a proposal for it. Okay, this is just a fun side slide about the argument for the weird meme language. Basically, it's like you take this upfront cost in learning a new language, but then once you sort of broken through that threshold, there's better communication when you're discussing the system, because you just agree on a terminology. You don't use existing terms that may sort of get you thinking in a more limited or incorrect way. That's also related to this idea that you can discuss the system formally that way. You can really define it, without reference to something else, just in itself, the same. And then, frankly, there is something about when all of the terms are a syllable, you can just talk about it faster.
Where would you start? I think a lot of people's problems would be like they don't know where to go to get over that barrier of understanding that common language. Like, is there like a resource?
So I think there's a number of different glossaries out there. So I think the first step is to get a concept of what the system's trying to do and the different overall parts. And then if you're trying to go a lot deeper into the code, saying it out loud helps. Okay, like this is a cup, the cat is biting the cup. Like when I'm going into an auction, there's a tend phase and then a dent phase. It does put a lot of demands on you, because I think the reason people use existing language is that they can sort of like skip having to think it through from the beginning. You can sort of attach it to an existing definition, but that's exactly the risk that they're talking about, is you don't want to do that. You want to like understand what it really is in itself. And so then you've got to like really read the code and reason through all the different interactions that are possible. So I say, I don't know, just take it a chunk at a time, I guess. Yeah, gem is the worth for collateral. Sin is system debt. So, when I worked on the JavaScript library for this, we just ended up using normal language instead. Yeah, I appreciate all the intense effort that the original smart contract developers put into this. They're a rare breed. Ask me more questions. I'm curious, like where your interest and curiosity is going here.
I have one question around, like, I remember, like, there was a time where you were, like, adding collateral because, I don't know if it's an incident that I heard about.
Yeah, the prices of Bitcoin and Ether were going lower, so I had to keep my position above a certain ratio. Well, you lose the collateral. You lose part of the collateral, yes.
So then there is an incentive, like liquidate yourself, so that you get proportion of.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you could. Oh, I guess. Well, okay. One of the parameters I haven't mentioned is that there's a penalty for being liquidated. So there's a finder's fee, but there's also a penalty, and the penalty should be larger than the finder's fee. Yeah.
Another question was, so, and I'm kind of agree on this, like, I don't understand, but like one of the issues that Maker as a whole had was the prices were like following USD, like it was kind of like inching up, and if I recall correctly, that there was no incentive to like drop the price lower, or not enough of an incentive. So like the price of DAI versus USD kept like inching up a little bit by bit. And then there was something that Maker did to kind of like push it down, which I think might be using USDC as collateral now. Why might be confusing things here?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because the basic mechanism for returning to peg if you're above it is that when you create a new position, when you lock new collateral in, the rate you get is not the market rate. The rate you get is still like $1 worth of DAI according to the system. So then you could always lock collateral in, mint DAI at the $1 rate, and then sell it at the market, whatever, 103 rate, and then get the profit. So that's a relatively easy thing to do, as long as you have the collateral to open a position. And even if you didn't have that much collateral, you could like, probably borrow it from somewhere, right? Just to do a smart contract loop. So basically with stablecoins, and we'll get into this more with your talk, like the situation where you're above the peg is always a lot easier, because you just increase supply somehow, right? It's the below the peg one that's more difficult. So I don't know, you may be referring to a specific situation that I just don't know the context for.
A bit more what that exact scenario was.
The interest rate can't be negative. Positive, you take out DAI. I actually have to put in slightly more DAI back to get normal collateral back. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
This interest rate is never negative.
don't think you'd ever want it to be.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of related. I remember there was this whole argument about like should Maker introduce the negative savings rate to get it closer to $1. But I can't remember the exact details. I don't necessarily mention it to
That would mean that they can't pay themselves. So how are they going to earn money?
yeah, I think it was a discussion on how to just get the price back to $1. Not necessarily in the interests of like the staff or anyone like that. Right.
But yeah, I mean,
If you
just
get paid more,
yeah,
details of
just thinking off the cuff though, if you had a negative interest rate, you'd be disincentivized from keeping your position open. So you'd want to buy DAI off the market and close your position, but that would drive the price up.
Yeah, so yeah, this is when it's below the peg, right?
Right.
This is useful when it's below the peg. Okay, so let's say you can't do that, right? So
But a negative interest rate also, I mean, decreases demand for opening positions in the first place. Doesn't it? Oh wait, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Sorry. No, actually, it's a great deal if you can get a loan with a negative interest rate. Incentivized, yeah, it drives the price up. Yeah, but then I mean, yeah, then you're burning someone's resources somewhere, and it's probably like the people running the system.
yeah.
So that's not sustainable. I could see that an argument for doing it for a short term.
So instead of doing that, what mechanisms do you have to drive it back up to $1?
Well, basically, like we went through, just selling collateral. Right? Like if it's below the peg. So you're saying like if there's some sort of like steady state where no one is under collateralized, but the price is below $1.
No. I was asking, you said before that the case where DAI is 1.1 is much easier to
Right.
handle than
Right.
Yes. So if it is 0.9, what are the options you have to drive it back up to 1.0, given that you can't charge a negative interest rate?
So a big part of what you mentioned earlier was if you believe that you will come back to one, then
Right.
you have to put more in, the umbrella. But that is kind of a bit of a circular thing because you are, when you do that, you're expecting it, or you're believing that you will come back to one.
Right.
You know, if you believe that you would, then you would do more to prevent yourself from being liquidated. But then if you don't, then yeah.
Well, so okay. So if there's some amount of positions open, then there's some demand for DAI, even if it's just so that the people can close out their positions and get their collateral back. And so in that third tier of response, where the system mints MKR, sells it on the open market, buys back DAI, right? The basic response is to reduce the supply of DAI in the open market by selling something in exchange for it and bringing it back and burning it. So whether it's MKR or whether you're sort of doing it indirectly, I guess, through a negative interest rate, those are all sort of the same class of strategies, right? Find some way of getting DAI back off the market into the system and burn it. So that if supply goes down and there's still some intrinsic demand for it as a medium of exchange, or even just so people can close out their positions, then the price should rebalance. Again.
I had a different question, and this is something that has been I've thought about since like 2020, since before the price is what are the incentives for people to deposit collateral and get back, other than to degen and be able to like restake it into something else. Like, have you seen any like real world sort of demand for this?
Right. Well, so in theory, that reduces the question of why do people take out loans. Now, within DeFi, the problem is this system as a whole was just so new that most of the things you could take out loans for were other DeFi projects and staking and so forth. Yeah. But the long-term vision is that then it expands to all the other things in the world that you might take out loans for.
But why do you take out people usually take out?
Right. So yeah, now if we're going to talk about different kinds of loans, like and the growth rates of different kinds of loan processes, then that's a big conversation, right? Like, of course, there's many people in DeFi and beyond trying to do more traditional style loans that introduce some sort of credit score or something like that. But then for me, it's like, then are we trying to do something different that can work with these sort of like permissionless characteristics of the blockchain, or are we just trying to like migrate existing financial parameters onto the blockchain? I think there's room for both, but I wouldn't want to just see it collapse to the traditional.
And I think one real world analogy, especially something that maybe Malaysians or older Malaysians would appreciate, would be like pawnbroking with your gold. Because like that happens a lot in Malaysia, that people put in their like jewelry or like their gold bars or heirlooms from their grandma. They'll give it to some pawnbroker and then they have cash. They can use that cash to like pay for their bills or whatever, and then later on they can pay back cash with some extra charges to get back that piece of gold that they have some emotional attachment to.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe
Yeah.
a bit of that.
Actually, that's a great example, because the situation we have been in crypto, right, is not a lot of people, but a small vocal subset of people suddenly found themselves with a lot of crypto, right? But they still also had optimism about the long-term future, so they wanted to be able to like pay their bills and stuff with this crypto without actually losing it. So if you could take out a loan against it, that would be ideal, right? And we've seen that not just in DeFi, but also like platforms to give you loans against your Bitcoin, right? Like BlockFi and Unchained and so forth.
See that actually, what you say is, it looks like taking those to make your illiquid assets so that you can get liquid assets to move funds and all.
Exactly.
But you still want to love that, so that's why.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you're an anon or something, then you don't want to have to apply for a credit score application or something. Well, this feels like a good time to segue to yours.
No need for me to present this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Intermission.
Intermission. Okay, so Andrew, I introduced and Sarah. I got to know Andrew in Barcelona actually, and was the only Malaysian that was there, and we were like, whoa. So yeah, and I really appreciate his work on like the token engineering commons. And I have also known the block science people for a good, I don't know, 5 years now, and I've always admired their work. It's always like for economics, like how do you build out things so that you have a better understanding of the real world as well. That's why they dabble into complex systems and stuff. Okay, but I also want to know. I'm curious, like before, like I feel like, because I feel like block science stuff can be a bit of like super rich. There's an analyst, yeah, you can say that like it's like super like a lot of PhD level stuff, but also I want to like have a little icebreaker, find out like like is this like your first year or something learning about this stuff, like so that we don't like use language that's not technical. So yeah.
So my name is Nicholas, and I'm from DaoSalon. So I basically get to crypto in around 2020, but that time around I was just knowing what it can bring for the future. I really love about blockchain technology, and that's why I'm not that into like the price action or anything, but I'm more into like the implications of how it can operate in our real world and how we can solve actually real problems. And I'm in enterprise club, so what I do is more on the entrepreneurial mindset. So with that, I actually started more into learning actually last year, and not the first year, so 2022, where I get more involved on like the hands-on
also in DeFi summer, which I can get a lot of exposure to a lot of DeFi and such. So yeah, still learning, and I want to get involved in the blockchain. There's a lot of info to take in as well, too much. So
projects. They're basically variations.
Oh, anyway, use it international. Yeah, use marketing. Yeah, marketing. It's fast.
So we're just going to review the design that works, the design that doesn't work, and a really different kind of design that should blow our minds a little bit. And that's not all to stablecoin design, but it's not like I know it anyway. So there we go, guys. Okay, so let's just drill these intuitions, these gut feelings we have before into our brains, into our bodies before we actually get. Right? So you have tea in front of you, and if you add water to the tea, that's like making more of the coin, right? The value is the same. The overall value is the same, but it's more diluted, right? Everyone feels this very intuitively. They don't have to think at all to understand this. Okay. And the reason I use blood is because communities, like big social organisms, are built around coins. So imagine a country. A country is like an organism, a living organism made of many humans. And the way these humans coordinate is with, money, which is like blood for the country, which is probably why Bitcoin had to be decentralized at first, because other countries would not like a new kind of blood type coming into the market. Right. So, theoretically, if you dilute your coin by 2x, then, and your market cap stays the same, then your price should go down 50%, right? I see a lot of nodding heads. This is good. We can continue. But in practice, this is not really what happens, right? Which is why it's useful for the issuers to print more money so they can suddenly have more money. So yes, now we know how the world works. Yes, we go to the basic design of Maker, which is basically only one that I know of that still kind of works today. Ample Fourth is something else. We're not talking about that today. So I put in ETH into the smart contract, but I want it back someday. I get DAI, but I have to repay slightly more than that because there's an interest rate, because humans, maker, people have to make money. They have to pay themselves. And since ETH is volatile, there's a 50% safety buffer. Obviously, I got the numbers wrong here because that's a 200% safety buffer that I put up there. But actually, as he said, it's 150%. Yeah. A lot of nodding heads. Actually, I thought there would be like total noobs here, but oh well. I'm just going to soldier on. Okay, so I have one DAI. How's it equal to 1 USD? Basically, it's interest rates. So, right. If DAI is bigger than $1, then you just have to make more DAI. How do you make more DAI? You decrease the interest rate. Right, so the stability fee goes down. The limitation here is since you have to pay humans at the end of the day, the stability fee can't be negative. But as you see, DAI is still maintaining the peg, and it's okay so far. If DAI is less than 1, then you just have to take out the water from the system. That means you have to reduce the amount of DAI. Yes, so the interest rate goes up. And if it doesn't go up enough, then Maker will, like some human will actually take, will buy up a lot of DAI and just keep that DAI somewhere to take it out of circulation. That's what he said. And where's he going to get that money? He's going to sell all of his Maker to buy up all of that DAI and hold it in this thing. It's a human-initiated action, and it's going to be held by a human. Yeah. So Hubble protocol is basically a port of Maker to Solana, but they have a slightly different way of doing this. Maker, I did not notice before today, but Maker apparently relies on, people just scanning with bots and looking for DAI loans to liquidate. And Hubble is kind of more centralized. They maintain this big pool of money called the Stability Vault. Everyone, please put your money into this vault, and your USDH into this vault. In return, you would get some kind of interest. And this big vault is what is going to liquidate bad positions. So yeah. Other variations on the Maker formula, Hubble protocol, they have the best explainer, which is why I feature them so much. And also I interviewed with them, so I kind of know the system. In addition to all the stuff which Maker has, they also let you exchange one-to-one with USDC and with 0 fees. Oh yes, Hubble. Maker says you must pay the stability fee in Maker, but that was for the single collateral DAI one. For the multi-collateral DAI, apparently you can pay it in DAI. So yes, these are the small variations on the Maker, general Maker formula. So now we come to algo stables. So far, we've just deposited A to create B, and we created B temporarily. We want to destroy B in the end, and then we come back to A, like a pawn shop, exactly like what Harith said. But what if we destroy A to create B? Yeah, we could destroy A to create B, and vice versa. Let's say B is the stable coin, and everyone suddenly wants to use the stable coin. So everyone wants to buy it. So it goes up from $1 to 1.2. Yes, the B is a stablecoin. It should stay at 1. Therefore, we create even more of B. Now, let's say that we have a mechanism that that can be trusted. This is a smart contract. A smart contract converts, can create B if you burn A. So there you go. If you could make such a thing, which you can because that's what smart contracts are for, you can make A's price go up because you can make the supply of A go down in order to create the supply of B, right? So the supply of A goes down to increase the supply of B. The supply of B goes down to increase the supply of A. Let's not talk about the price of those. We assume the price of those. But yeah, it's like two pools of water. You push the water down here, the water here goes up. You push the water down here, the water goes up over here. Right? It's pretty clever, actually. Because, but this doesn't work when someone wants to totally exit the A and B system, right? So there was a lot of people in B. They first felt like something was kind of wrong. Some people want to get out into A, but they didn't just want to get out and stay in A. No, they wanted to sell A even further and get out into Bitcoin or Ethereum or USDT. So that's the problem with this system. And then that was when they found out that every day only a certain number of people could convert from B back to A. And that's when everyone in B really started to panic. And rumor has it that SBF was the one who actually started the whole thing. So rumors. And this later came around to bite him in the ass because then he couldn't have enough funds to, keep himself solvent. But the point is, okay. So let me see if I remember what happened. Apparently there was a huge $1 billion Bitcoin short. Then at the very same time, the Luna Foundation was just, withdrawing its UST from this pool to put into another pool. And because of this momentary chance of decreased liquidity, this guy, of course, he sold Bitcoin up high. He got UST. He dumped all that UST into Curve's 3 pool, got out the USDC and USDT. And so now that 3 pool only contains UST. And then it was a 4 pool? Oh, dude, I don't know, man. All right. What happened next?
Okay, but do you remember the time USD is not just Luna characterized? Because they added ETH, Avalanche, and Bitcoin.
That was something different. That was the Luna Foundation. They had their own stockpile of those assets, and they also wanted to have a way for people to go directly from UST to those assets. And they started selling that a lot to keep up the peg. Yeah. And then people in UST, they were lured there by those 20% APYs, and then they want to get out, but then oh shit, you could only like 100 million or something could convert back to Luna per day, and then once they were in Luna, they sold it even further. So the supply of Luna increased, and at the same time, people dumped that Luna, which made it death spiral. Yes. Oh man, I really forgot the rest of that story. Anyway. Now, we want to talk about stable coins that are not pegged to the USD. So it can be stable, you know, relatively stable with respect to itself. It's a form of objective versus relative. So far.
Do you mean that the volatility is tracked or the rate of change of the price is tracked?
More like it has less volatility, but it is actually a fork of DAI.
Does it have a target price still? Or is
Yes, it has a target price. We'll get to that. So the basically it's a fork of DAI, single collateral DAI. And the mechanism is still the same, except now the whole point of RAI was to reduce dependency on humans to a minimum, which means in Maker, humans vote to set rates, as you said before. But in RAI, there is a PID controller inside the smart contract, and it can set a negative rate because it doesn't have to pay humans. It just exists on the blockchain. It's like in control theory, so proportional, integral, and derivative. So it's like
It's a classic example of a thermostat.
yeah.
So
You
like,
explain.
if you want to hit a certain temperature and you're at a certain temperature, you don't want to just like overshoot and overcrack, and create this wave around the target temperature. So it uses that to pick the rates that you will kind of hit and not overshoot.
It's just smoother than line. It's pretty
Kind of like a damper unit.
Yeah. I mean, like an aircon, right? An aircon has a PID controller, kind of like that.
It's like, yeah, the bigger the difference to the target, the faster the rate of change. But as you get closer, the smaller the rate of change. So you sort of like have a soft landing answer.
Yeah, it's like when you shower and then you turn on the hot water a lot in the beginning and then you turn it back later. So this is programmed into the smart contract. And also the idea is still to reduce dependency on humans even further, which means it doesn't even target a fiat currency. So so what target should it actually target at first? They chose 3.14 just because they're nerds. Yeah, pi. So they chose 3.14 USD. And just like in Maker, there's an oracle that feeds market price into the smart contract. The smart contract says, oh, market price, that means people out there are buying and selling it for this price, but the target price that I actually wanted is this price. So then it will set the interest rates accordingly. Yes, so if outside people are buying and selling it for for let's say $2.8, then I will set my target price to $3.3, and the interest rates are calculated from that. So that is right, and that is the end of my presentation, apparently. Yes, I did talk with Stefan Ionescu. Well, it seems that adoption is not as good as planned, as expected.
$2 now.
Really?
$2 something.
Ah, okay.
Again, don't have the full details, but as I understand, what's his name? The guy who is the meme guy for reflexive.
Amin?
Yes. Was saying because of Ethereum staking derivatives, like State Ether by Lido and a bunch of others, then there is now less demand for RAI.
Ah,
I'm not sure why or how exactly. But if I understand completely very vaguely, it's like you can get more better return to risk profile from staking your Ether in those LSDs versus just putting it into Bitcoin, right? I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with how or why that works.
I have
I
no
think
idea.
no relationship between one, but right adoption is pretty bad. Because if right didn't have adoption, means that no one actually want, let's say, below the upgrading target, okay, no one push it up back in due to no one believe in it, no one want to take you to buy more so that you can get back 3 or 1 form. That's really the point price.
Yeah, probably the controller is setting a pretty high target for the price right now.
Yeah. Same with Maker. I think Maker have network effect for the stablecoin itself. Like when you drop below 1, people know that you're gonna buy. It's let's say 90 cents, I buy it back. People still have the belief that I buy it back, you back to $1 and you make a 10% profit. But for Ryan, whenever it's not there, if let's say it stays at $2 or something for a long time, then you just switch to it.
Yeah. There's no human expectation for the price, right? Because
No,
yeah.
Some of it is just like standard branding marketing.
and also the Maker holders as well. Maker holders, one diamond is
Incentive is right at that.
if that doesn't work well, Maker holds, the Maker token will also. Yeah.
I think it's also one of the first projects in Ethereum.
Yeah, one of
There's a lot of like curiosity.
Yeah, it had a really good reputation in 2018.
I have a different question. Have you explored how like demurrage might affect any kind of stablecoin? Basically, where like if you have a so I work for a gold event. So like one way of you getting fees is that you instead of and I think Amplify has this kind of thing as well. Like not exactly, but like you charge fees to the user, right? So like to try and but basically, so like you might have 100 now, but then every day you pay 2% of your balance, so that gets burned away from you, taken away from you. And that helps to provide like a mechanism for the stablecoin supply.
Is that demurrage?
Demurrage is basically just when instead of getting like diluted by interest, where the coin supply increases, you get your balance like decreased.
Ah, okay. So so I get concentrated instead of diluted.
Yeah, at least one mechanism. Right? You can have like 2 different mechanisms.
But overall, the price would go up or what?
In the case where your balance gets cut down, then the idea is as the supply is lower, but your demand stays the same, then the price should.
Ah, okay.
The more like neutral credit currency type system, they encourage people to spend more, and that's why they don't want people to hold or hodl, so that like over time the value actually decreases if you hold on.
Right. So it's kind of like using inflation to encourage spending instead of now you decrease the balance instead of decreasing the value to make you not want to hold on to the coin any longer.
I think there's a popular the Miracle of Wordle.
Yes, I guess
Where-
watch it.
No, yeah, maybe we should play the
Oh, yeah, I can. I mean, we watched it together.
One for
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
So, yeah,
you go. I think you know.
I mean, not very much, but like just the idea of like in the Great Depression, I think in late 1920s, in Austria, I think they introduced this basically community currency, like currency that's
Virgil, yeah?
made out of thin air, essentially. Yeah, and then the one key difference was that if you don't spend it, then the local municipal council will like I think charge you
so like your balance essentially gets lower. So people are incentivized to like, it's like a hot thing, right? You don't want to hold one point, you want to pass it around to someone else. So it encourages like people to trade. And during depression, like no one wants to like there's no value, you can't work, right? So if you have this local community currency, then people are incentivized to still trade and do activities like economic activities.
Yeah.
So, but eventually, apparently, the central bank shut it down.
Yeah.
Was a
The blood.
competitive type of blood.
Yeah.
The bad times.
It's very interesting because it's kind of to me maybe the future that we might head into if we keep personally I'm concerned about supply chain disruption and also like inflation, and so that would make it like a recession or depression like that. So that's why like local currency like this global currency that they issued actually helped to revive like an entire town. Because at that point, no one had much money, but everyone is actually available to work. So, what you need is just some kind of like tender between each other so that, people can still conduct economic activity without relying on the central bank to print money and giving you money, right? So, yeah. I mean, I don't, yeah.
So I just want to make a contribution from clinical experience with doing that goal thing. It's that when you do leverage, people feel like you're stealing from them, even though it's like set up front, it's clear that you have to pay fees and all that stuff. But people would, it's kind of like an intuitive feeling where like I had 100, yeah, then like why is it suddenly now 99.98, right? Like, why are you stealing this small part of fractions of money from me? So there's a whole, I think, point to discuss about the difference between inflating versus a damage, because effectively it's the same, right? Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like the same to the human.
Psychologically, you don't feel like your money is being stolen from you. Maybe you're being lied to, but you feel comfort in that your 100 is still 100, even if it's worth less, versus like your 100 is now worth 99. Yeah, so there's some psychological thing to discuss that, and I do feel like if you feel like you own that community currency, then maybe that isn't as much of a problem. It's not a problem anymore because you know that it's your community's currency. So even though you being your balance is being reduced, that it's just how it works for the community. Whereas like if it's some national level currency that you don't feel any ownership of, then that's where you might feel like you're being wrong.
Yeah, so that's right, because a community currency, right, if you can only use it within a certain region, it's always going to be at some disadvantage relative to like a national or international currency that's just more functional across the markets. Right, so you have to make up for that disadvantage with the fact that it's in a community that you care about. Like you're making up for the difference with non-monetary value, community value.
Although one thing that can happen is, let's say every community has their own currency, then there are people who can go between them and provide exchanges, right?
But those still have to be mediated by trust relationships.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, then it's actually just another national currency.
There's also the fact that if you increase the supply of the coin, it kind of goes well with the fact that everyone is working every day, and then there's more value being created every day.
That was basically what happened at Mortal. Like, they revitalized the town, and then they were like, well, you can't do this. And then they got shut down by the central bank.
Like, this is why the government's using inflation instead of just taking money out of your bank, because it's less psychologically impactful, even though it's the same thing.
I mean, it's probably even like back then it's also easier because money is like physical.
You have to go in people's houses to take it.
Yeah.
And so then really, like, I think the thing to focus on is the move there is that when you do the inflation, who do you give the new interest? Right? You're effectively giving them more political power. And so, like, did you ever play with anti-set dollar or dynamic set dollar? Like very obscure rebasing coins.
People were getting into that quite a lot. Which one? ESD and DSD.
Yeah. Very, very, very huge. But so, you know, first we had Yam, right, which is like a rebase. Like everybody's balances change all the time. That was like really weird. But then you had ESP and USD that were just going through inflation. But if you had locked in your tokens into the staking pool, then you got the inflation. You got the new issuance. So it was like a kind of a risk tier system where if you were willing to stake your tokens, meaning you couldn't withdraw them for like a certain time window, then you got the new issuance. Yeah, there's something that made really clear about like the power is you inflate the currency, and then who you give the new issuance to is who you're giving political power.
Yeah. Well, start your own protocol.
There's a joke where it's like use where like certain group of people get new issuance of money. Just some economists for a long time got really deep. There's a theory behind it.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's actually what's happening in the financial system.
Yeah.
So, you know,
The issuance goes to the new banks, the people closest to the central bank.
it's like, that's why, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think the entire financial system is going to be sustainable, and that's why I think like we do have more workshops.
Stop recording. Stop recording.
Like, okay, so you mentioned doing maybe an intro to check that, like, but how does the help us learn, like, you know, whether a certain design of the coin is sustainable?
Well, can we go off camera for this?
And